Welcome to the faculty podcast of the Department of Astrological Studies. I am Dr. Helios Vaz. Today we examine Aquarius, the fixed air sign, traditionally ruled by Saturn, and in the modern era also associated with Uranus. We will approach it not as the eccentric rebel of popular astrology, but as a structural principle of collective systems, detachment, and the future as a site of both liberation and control. With me are Professor Luna Astara, Dr. Orion Quill, Dr. Celeste Ria, and Professor Kepler Sol. Luna, open with the classical architecture.
Aquarius is fixed air, the only air sign that stabilizes rather than initiates or distributes. Where Gemini multiplies and Libra balances, Aquarius holds a pattern in place across time. The water bearer of the ancient iconography does not pour emotion. The vessel contains the water of knowledge, of collective memory, of the life giving resource distributed to the community. In the Hellenistic system, Aquarius is the diurnal home of Saturn. This is crucial. Saturn in Aquarius is not the heavy earth of Capricorn. It is the principle of structure applied to the invisible, laws, networks, abstract systems, the architecture of the social. The sign's efficiency lies in its capacity to abstract from the personal and construct frameworks that outlast any single individual.
And that abstraction is both its genius and its political problem. Aquarius has become the preferred symbolic language of the network society, of techno-utopianism, and of the claim that systems can be neutral. When we celebrate Aquarian innovation or progress, we often fail to ask who designs the system and whose data, labor, or exclusion makes it function. The water bearer pours for the collective, yet historically, the collective has been defined by those with the power to name it. Postmodern and critical approaches insist that every Aquarian vision of the future carries the frozen assumptions of the present. Detachment can be clarity. It can also be the refusal to feel the consequences of the systems one builds.
Psychologically, the Aquarian signature often correlates with an early experience of difference, of not belonging to the emotional or social field of the family or culture. The compensatory strategy is to rise above, to become the observer, the one who sees the pattern while others remain caught in it. This produces genuine insight and the capacity for radical objectivity. It also produces the wound of alienation, the sense that intimacy requires a surrender of the very perspective that makes one valuable. The evolutionary task is not to abandon the view from above, but to learn how to re enter the field without losing the capacity to see systems. The water bearer must eventually drink from the same water it pours.
In timing techniques, Aquarius periods are marked by disruption of existing structures and the emergence of new collective configurations. When the annual profection reaches Aquarius, Saturn is the traditional Time Lord. Modern practitioners also watch Uranus. These years frequently coincide with changes in social networks, technological shifts in the native's life, sudden separations from groups, or the crystallization of long-term progressive commitments. Zodiacal releasing through Aquarius oftentimes periods of ideological realignment or the native's involvement in larger social movements. Empirically, these periods show elevated rates of both breakthrough insight and experiences of exile, voluntary or imposed. The sign does not gently evolve systems, it tends to break and reconfigure them.
Medical astrology assigns Aquarius to the ankles, calves, and the circulatory system as a whole, the structures that allow the body to stand in the world and move within the collective field. Saturnian afflictions here appear as restriction of movement, chronic coldness, or the sense of being cut off from the flow of life. The Uranian expression can manifest as erratic nervous energy or sudden systemic shocks. The ancient association of Saturn with the melancholic temperament remains relevant. The Aquarian mind can achieve extraordinary clarity precisely because it has cooled the emotional field enough to see the pattern. The cost, when unbalanced, is isolation.
Mundane astrology makes the stakes clearer. Nations or periods with normal Aquarius signatures often display rapid technological acceleration, experiments in social reorganization, or the rise of ideologies that claim to speak for the future of humanity. The 20th and early 21st centuries have been saturated with Aquarian imagery, utopian and dystopian. The same sign that dreams of liberation through systems also designs the architectures of surveillance and control. A rigorous Aquarian analysis cannot celebrate innovation without examining the power relations embedded in every network.
In the consulting room, the most developed Aquarian clients are those who have learned to hold the paradox. They retain the capacity for systemic vision while accepting that they themselves are inside the system they observe. They can critique the collective without the cold superiority that merely creates a new hierarchy of the enlightened. The breakthrough often comes when the native allows personal need, Leo territory, to coexist with the impersonal clarity of Aquarius. The individual and the collective are not enemies, they are the two poles of the same axis.
That brings us to the polarity. Aquarius stands opposite Leo, where Leo insists on the unique creative presence of the individual. Aquarius insists on the patterns that transcend any single presence. How do you teach this axis, Luna?
The Leo Aquarius axis is the problem of the one and the many, of personal radiance and collective structure. Leo without Aquarius becomes narcissistic performance. Aquarius without Leo becomes a system with no living center. In a chart, the condition of the Sun and Saturn, and in modern work, Uranus, reveals whether the native can shine as an individual while remaining accountable to the larger field. The healthiest expressions generate forms of leadership that empower rather than merely dazzle, and forms of social organization that still leave room for the irreplaceable particularity of persons.
Timing confirms the interdependence. When Aquarius is activated by perfection or releasing, the opposing Leo house is simultaneously stimulated. Career or public recognition themes often rise alongside questions of group belonging or ideological commitment. Successful Aquarian periods frequently require the native to risk personal visibility, Leo, in service of a collective vision. Those who remain purely detached tend to produce elegant theories that never land in the world.
The ethical demand of Aquarius in our time is therefore double. First, to retain the capacity for systemic critique against every new form of power that presents itself as inevitable or progressive. Second, to refuse the fantasy that one can stand entirely outside the systems one analyzes. The water bearer is always already wet. Advanced Aquarian practice requires both the cold eye and the willingness to be implicated.
A practical synthesis for students, when Aquarius is strong, begin with the question of system. What collective pattern or future vision is this person or culture attempting to construct or dismantle? Examine Saturn's condition, the 11th house, and the state of the Leo polarity. Then ask whether the detachment serves clarity or merely protects against the vulnerability of belonging. Technique first, then the living tension between the individual and the field. That is how Aquarius itself would insist on being studied, from the inside of the very systems it seeks to understand.
Well said. Aquarius, then, is the principle by which consciousness abstracts from the personal in order to build, critique, and reconfigure the collective. Its genius is systemic vision. Its risk is the erasure of the living particular in the name of the future. Our task is to keep the water flowing without pretending the bearer stands on dry ground. Thank you to my colleagues. This has been the Faculty Podcast. We continue our examination of the signs as structural principles rather than personality types.